I had no background in sales. I started probably 3 years ago. And within 12 to 18 months, I was making 100K a month in commission. So that was wild. I mean, to go from making $1,500 a month to 100K a month in 18 months, my life went upside down. The biggest limiting thing in the industry now is that people don't learn how to sell to the person because they're selling from a script. The difference between making 20K and 80K or 100K is everything that you're never going to learn if you have a script. I do recommend all of my private students, I recommend that they study that. And most sales professionals just don't know how to do that. If someone said to me like, it's really expensive, I'd be like, yep.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a good objection.
Well, or like if
Now, what I like about this interview is that Josh went from 0 to 100K per month in commissions, but he did it in a very unique way that no other sales guru is talking about. And he was someone who was coaching and training the sales team for Alex Hermosi. So Josh definitely knows what he's talking about. There's two distinctions from a lot of the other sales trainers out there. Josh actually finds resistance and dives deeper. Whereas most other people would say, don't try to, try to avoid any sort of sales resistance whatsoever. Josh is actually like, no, actually, let's find that spot, the trigger spot, and go deeper, because without resistance, there's no transformation, which is pretty true if you think about it. And the other part is Josh did over 2 million in sales before he even knew what the term objections were, which is super interesting because all you hear is objection handling. So in this episode, you're gonna learn how to sell better, how to close more deals, how to build relationships, how to position your offer no matter what industry you're in. And if you're selling funnels like us, like me, you're gonna learn how to find the right data and how to package your offer, present it. And no matter what industry you're in, he's gonna give you sort of like start to finish the framework for how to close deals that are high ticket, even if you don't consider yourself or identify as a closer. So let's dive in. And as always, I wanted to start by asking Josh, how much money do you make and how do you make that? What are your revenue streams?
Yeah, so it ranges from about 50K to 100K per month. And as a sales professional, there's really 3 ways that you can do that. One is selling, so being on someone's offer and selling. Number 2 is training and managing a team, which I do. And you would usually get a percentage of the additional revenue that you're generating that team. So if they were making 100K and you make them 200K, you would take 10%, 20%, whatever that is, it would move. And then the third way is private coaching. So at the moment, I do all of those 3. The breakdown's probably about 30, 30, 30, I'd say, between private coaching, managing teams and taking some revenue from the team, and then actually doing my own closing as well.
Got it. And just for everyone listening, Josh is actually coming and teaching you guys listening. We're doing a masterclass for people where we'll have more time to dive deeper into specifics of how funnel builders, funnel agencies, coaches, how they can sell their own offers. And in this game of sales, there's a few different paths I've seen people take. It's the appointment setters, is closers, and then offer owners. And so like creating your own offers. Where did you start out and how did you get to now training sales teams like Hermos' team?
So my story, I guess my claim to fame was that I think I was one of the quickest people to have no background in sales and hit 100K months. And that's commission. That's not generated revenue. So I had no background in sales. I started probably 3 years ago, maybe 3.5. And within 12 to 18 months, I was making 100K a month in commission. So that was wild. I mean, to go from making $1,500 a month, $2,000 a month to 100K a month in 18 months, my life went upside down. So the way I started, that's the question, isn't it?
Have you heard that a lot? That, people say you're a natural. Like, what makes you understand people, and how did you build the skills to be able to communicate in a way where people trust you and buy from you?
That's a great question. And if I flip the question the other way around, what is it that prevents people from learning about people? I think the biggest limiting thing in the industry now is that people don't learn how to sell to the person because they're selling from a script. And the way that I learned sales was there was no script. And so I got thrown in at the deep end, which was you don't have specific questions. You don't have a specific order in which you're having a conversation. You just need to talk to this person as a human being and find why they're not where they want to be. And so I find that people that learn sales, they go from maybe 0 to 20K a month, even pushing it 0 to 40 or 50K a month quicker than I did, because they get given a script. It's on a piece of paper. They sit with their script on their phone, on their Zoom call, and they just read the script. Now, if you do a decent job of that and you do the right tonality, you'll do all right. But the difference between making 20K and 80K or 100K is everything that you're never going to learn if you have a script. If you have a script, you're never truly connecting with people. So I see people that have taken 2,000 sales calls, but every call they've always had a script. So they actually haven't had 2,000 conversations with a human. They've had 2,000 Zoom calls where they're reading a script. And so my first 200 calls was no script. And I just never, ever used a script. I still don't use a script. And so I very quickly learned to understand a person because I had no kind of script in the way that was preventing me needing to truly connect with a human being, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say you never had a script, because I'm the same way, and I've also never had a script, and I've sold like hundreds of funnel projects. And it was only when I started, when people ask questions like, how do you do it? When I started, like I had to teach it, that I was starting to think about the process, because it kind of came natural to me. And so I came up with the 3 C's, where I connect with them, I collect the right information, and then I'm like, now I know exactly what you need. And then I present a custom offer where we do everything for them. And that was always easier for me to sell, where I could just either learn all those things or hire people to my team, because what they wanted was a solution and an outcome. And they didn't like it didn't matter how many pages were involved. And it's not about like, is it the logo in PNG file or is it a PDF? You know, it's like people try to focus too much on like the details
100%.
and not the full transformation. So that's interesting. So how would you say people who want to get started? So maybe let's talk about some of the principles when having a sales conversation. And by the way, I would still like to know how you got to work with people like Hermos, because he also messaged me like 2 years ago before he blew up. And I built a funnel for one of his portfolio companies. So you choose if you want to tell that story first, how you got to the place where you could work with them and what that process was. And then we'll talk about the principles of selling and how to communicate in a way. Because if you don't have a script, what is it that you do have?
I'll answer the Hormozy question first. I think people will be interested in that. So having gone from 0 to 100K a month in commission, I was kind of infamous in the market, because people were like, well, who's this random kid that's just come along and outperforming everyone? And I was very fortunate to get headhunted by quite a few of the previous big names in the industry, people like Matt Ryder, Jeremy Miner, people like that. And so I was able to piggyback on their network. And so whilst I'd developed an amazing sales ability, I had no network, no relationships in the industry, and I'd come up so quick. And so I was very, very grateful and very fortunate to meet people like Matt and Jeremy. And they took me under their wing and said, hey, you know, we want you to be involved in our companies. And through those relationships, which I had to build, and I'll tell you what I mean by had to build in a minute. Through those relationships, doors just started opening. People would see me on podcasts with Jeremy. People would see me within companies and say, okay, you know, you have a relationship with this person. And I very quickly worked my way up through the leadership team. And when you do that, doors open, people hear your name through other people's name. And I actually learned this kind of method a long time ago from Ty Lopez, who used to say, if you say quotes of people when you're speaking, you know, like, oh, well, it's kind of like Albert Einstein says this, or it's kind of like this person says this. Because you're the person referencing their name, you get put in the same bracket of like oh, well, he's talking about Albert Einstein, so he must be, you know, on some form of intelligence level of Albert Einstein. And so I realized that just having a great sales ability wasn't going to be enough to open the doors that I wanted. I had to be around the right people and say, hey, I work with Jeremy Miner, or I work with Matt Ryder, or I work with these type of people. And so when I got my foot in the door with some of those people, I was just pestering them and pestering them and pestering them. Hey, I want to lead the teams. Hey, I want to lead the teams. I want to lead the teams. And I think for everybody listening, whether you're a business owner or someone that wants to be a sales professional, there's a really important lesson in that, which is doors will open, but you've got to keep knocking on them until they open. And I think, you know, if you're wanting to become a funnel designer or whatever, you can't just wait for opportunities to be served up on a silver platter for you. You've really got to just keep going and going and going. And that was a big lesson for me. Was I must have been chasing Matt in Slack for 6 months saying, you know, hey, I'm closing on some of your offers, but I don't want to be closing the offers. I want to be trading the teams. And to just have that persistence, that over time, over about 12 months, is what then meant that they said, hey, do you want to come in and train Alex Hormozzi's old team at Gym Launch? So yeah, that's how that happened. Yeah.
I love what you said about being prepared when you get the right opportunities. Because when I left mastermind.com with Tony and Dean, they asked me if I know someone else, because they knew I was also coaching people. And so I have local friends who got into this game pretty quickly that I introduced, and I gave them a chance. They got the foot through the door. But after that stage, you go into the room, I can no longer help you. Then it's up to you to stack those skills, to be able to present examples, to have a portfolio, all the things that I've done for years in darkness. Because once you get out there in the light, it's up to you to be prepared. And for an example, you know, same thing for you. When you got to the stage where you could train the sales team at Gym Launch, like if you would suck at sales, the relationship wouldn't save you. They can help you, right? And so everything is like strategic, and it's like building a puzzle, and you got to have all the pieces to then be able to also actually deliver on what you are following up 6 months about, right? And so now you're then training salespeople and working with big clients. So I love that. Now talk to me about principles in sales, because I'm sure there's a lot of mistakes people make. They get on calls, they either freeze, or they're just sitting there waiting for clients to ask questions, and like they talk about, yeah, so we build funnels, and then they're waiting for questions about, okay, what's included? Yeah, so here's what's included. Okay, how much is it? It's 10 grand, it's 5 grand. And it's like, okay, I'll think about it. Send me a proposal, I guess. And there's no like back and forth and like this partnership of we're gonna do the project together, right? And so maybe talk a little bit about the principles when you sell.
The principles for me, and the way that my mentor taught me, I've now broken them down when I do private coaching into 4 sections. So within this kind of premise, there's principles within each of these. The first section is yourself. If you show up as a fat, overweight person that can't manage yourself, there is an energy transference on the call that the person on the other end of the call, whether it's a Zoom video call or just a phone call, they can feel your insecurity. They can feel your uncertainty with yourself. So the first section of principles is look at yourself in the mirror. Do you actually think that you're a high value human being? If you do, that's going to have more of an impact than what questions you ask or what funnel you have, you know, everything set up around. Are you the type of person that should be respected, should be valued, can provide value to the marketplace? And if the answer is no, before you go and learn a sales script, before you go and learn questions, what is one thing you can do today that you should stop doing, or one thing you should do today that you should start doing, that will move you closer to be the type of person that deserves to have influence? You know, if you wake up and you put snooze on your alarm and you sleep there for an hour, like maybe just stop doing that. And you'll feel instantly when you turn up to your next sales call, you sit there with your chest proud, your shoulders back, you feel like you're the type of person that deserves to be listened to. So that's the first section of principles. Now there's dozens and dozens of principles within there. The second section is the pre-call. So how do you feel about someone turning up to a call? Do you feel like you're super thankful that they're turning up to a call? That's not going to go very well for you. Or do you feel like it's an opportunity for them to learn about what you do? And this is where we start getting into framing. So one of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of sales reps do, and even business owners, is they'll have someone book in a call and they'll send out their confirmation text and it will say, hey, it's Gusten. Thank you so much for booking in a call. I'm super excited to meet with you. I can't wait to have our conversation. And I read that and I'm like, you're really going to climb an uphill battle on this sales call, and you haven't even had the sales call yet.
It's like, sorry to interrupt. It's almost like when someone gets a comment on a social media post and they start the conversation by, hey, thanks for commenting on my post. I've never understood the psychology there. Like, what's there to be grateful for that you know, like from a positioning and I guess what you call framing perspective, is just the wrong way to start the conversation, isn't it?
100%. And so that has a huge influence. And this is the type of stuff that doesn't really get trained on in sales training. And I think the reason is because sales training usually revolves around what happens on the call. Very rarely do you find sales training that talks about, well, how do you position yourself? How do you position the call? How do you position the opportunity? So that's the second set of principles, is how should you do that? Now, to give people listening a better example, you know, if someone books in a call, I'll just send a text and say, hey, got you booked in. Is that still a good time? And it's very simple. I'm not desperate. I'm not that bothered, really. I was just, hey, got you booked on my calendar. Is that time still good? Yes. And it is just very short, very sweet.
Is that because you're not sure if you can help them yet? So if you were super excited, like, I know we're going to help you, and you go into it like trying to convince them to buy, that's very different than saying like, hey, I got your call. I'll see you tomorrow on the call, right? Which is more like, it's just going to be a conversation to see if I even can help you, right?
I think that's the cliche answer that we hear nowadays in the industry is, hey, you know, I don't know if and how I can help you, which is fine. It makes sense. But I just think in general, like people live by very different principles in sales interactions than they do in real life, but they shouldn't. Like if you went down to the street and some guy comes up to you and it's like, hey, like, I'm super excited to get to know you. What's your name? You'd be like, this guy's a bit weird. Like, so why do we live by these different principles just because we have the detachment that it's a Zoom call or it's someone on the internet? You know, you've probably heard the phrase keyboard warriors. People behave in very, very different ways when they have the safety net of being behind a screen and commenting some shit on someone's post. Whereas if they were in person, they wouldn't say that. But it's the same in sales interactions. Like you wouldn't go up to someone on the street and be super excited and super needy and super intense. There's an element of kind of like, I don't know you. I'm going to have a conversation with you. You've booked in on my calendar, but I don't know you. So I have no interest to be excited. And so I think just living by more authentic principles is this section here. The third section is the offer. You know, I'm sure you've seen so many times that someone has a great business. They're a great business owner. They have a great product, but the way they position it in the offer is terrible. I mean, have you had those experiences with funnel designers that just have no idea how to position that?
Yeah.
And so the third section with sales, mastering it, is how do you actually word what you're about to offer? You know, it's very different saying, hey, we're going to do 12 weeks of Zoom coaching. It's not that appealing. Whereas if you say, hey, we're going to spend 12 weeks and we're going to dive really deep into what you've got going on, and you're going to have real-time feedback, real-time advice. We're going to work together on a game plan. And as we execute that game plan, you've got real-time accountability to make sure that not only do you have the steps, but that you actually walk those steps. Does that make sense? That's the same as me saying it's 12 weeks of Zoom calls, but one sounds very, very different to the other. And again, typically sales professionals don't get taught on this. Actually, the industry is leaning into this weird direction where it's like, oh, your pitch doesn't matter. And I'm like, I've sold 30K packages because the pitch was so good that when people get to the end of the pitch, they're salivating over wanting to purchase whatever it is you're selling, you know. And to say that the pitch doesn't matter, I mean, why then do we have copywriting?
Yeah.
Why is it so
just
powerful?
going to say that this feels very much like learning how to write good copy. but speaking it with confidence on calls instead.
Exactly. And I think that is something that every true sales professional that wants to become a master should understand, is how do you say the same thing in a way that allows someone to create a visual idea of it in their mind that is exciting, that is very clear, that is very powerful. And most sales professionals just don't know how to do that. So when I work one-on-one with clients or businesses, one of the first thing I'll do is I'll listen to their calls, and I'll skip all the way through the discovery to begin with, and I'll listen to the pitch, and I'll say to them, are you bored listening to yourself saying this pitch? And most of the time the sales reps are like, yeah, man, I'm bored listening to myself pitching this. And I'm like, well, how do you think the person on the end of the phone is going to feel?
Yeah.
You know, so that's the third thing.
If you don't use hype with tonality, and you're not super excited about the offer, how do you make it more compelling, where it still sounds exciting, but it doesn't feel fake?
I think that's just the words. Like, let me pull up an example for you. I can read out like a very short section of a script that I wrote for a business. Now, this is in a dating industry, so it's slightly different, but you'll get the idea. I'm not hyping it up with my tonality, not in any way, shape, or form. But the words are very, very clear. So let's see here. So this is a mastermind in the third phase. So phase 1 is a digital course. Phase 2 is Zoom calls. And then phase 3 is like an in-person thing. So this is a big package. This is a big offer. So phase 3 would be, hey, so Gusten, phase 3 for you, that's going to be the Miami Mastermind. Now, finally, after your 12 weeks of online, you're going to graduate and you're going to come to our in-person private mastermind, and we hold that in Miami. Now, when you're there, you're going to actually work on mastery. You're going to work on mastering this priceless skill set in the most efficient way that you possibly can. That is up close. It's personal. You're going to work directly with Daniel, and you're going to learn all of the advanced strategies, things like, how do you go up to a whole group of women instead of one-to-one? How do you overcome some of the tests that women are going to put you through? How do you generate things like sexual tension? This experience is going to be immersive, and you're going to be around other guys just like you. It's kind of like a brotherhood of guys that are really, really dedicated and committed to having success in their dating life. Now, because you've got that environment, you've probably heard that you're the average of your environment, the people around you. It's kind of like a cheat code. It's like a cheat code to you being able to leap several years ahead in your journey, like 3 paragraphs from it. So instead of me saying, hey, you're going to come to a mastermind, it's copywriting. But most people don't know how to do that.
It's because I was going to ask you if you ever use like visual presentations where you show like, here's the framework. But I think if you're a good communicator, through words, you'll paint the picture and future vision for what it's going to be like. I could imagine myself being in Miami as you were saying that. Proves the point.
And sales trainers don't train on this. And actually, or not any sales trainers that I've seen for a long time. There was one sales trainer that used to train on this, which was Taylor Welch. He used to understand that it was very, very important that you've got the discovery, you've got the diagnosis, but then you really, really need to be able to explain what you're offering in a way that's crystal clear and visceral as well. And I see a lot of sales being lost when the discovery was great, the questions were great, the diagnosis was great, and then they get into, hey, let me tell you what we've got going on over here. And within 30 seconds, the person is like falling asleep in the chair on the Zoom call, trying to listen to what's going on. That bit should actually be where the energy gets more intense, because the discovery should be very neutral. Like you said, I don't know if this is going to be a fit for you. I'm going to ask you some questions, figure out if there's compatibility. If there is, I'm more than happy to take you through what we've got going on over here. Once you've reached that milestone of, hey, I know that what we do is going to be a perfect fit for you, Gusten, now you get more intense and more exciting and more building the story of what this transformation is that the person's going to go through. It shouldn't be a moment where you kind of like open up the valve and all the gas comes out and it's just like, and everybody's like, okay, I'm bored now. That's your opportunity to really hype someone up on, you're about to make a significant investment. Let me tell you, and build a vision in your mind of why that's going to be the best decision you've ever made.
Yeah. And would you agree that the best way to paint a picture is to first explain what it's not, right? So for example, when I sell funnel packages, I first explain what it's not. So it's not a fancy funnel page. It's not, you know, this design that you're going to have like fancy branding. But in fact, a lot of personal brands, 7 and 8 figures, don't have the front to back end sales funnel ecosystem where you have like the umbrella brand and all your offers and like this customer journey from front end to back end, where we actually not just launch it. So not just this, not just the course, but in person, not just launch it, but we optimize it for 30, 60 days. So everything you're saying makes a ton of sense. And these are things that I've maybe not even studied enough of my own calls. I've just done them because I guess I'm a marketer first and then learned how to communicate.
But funny you mentioned that, because before I got into sales, I was a marketer as well, for brick and mortar stores. So not digital, but I learned copy, I learned branding, I learned visuals, I learned graphic design, I learned psychology. And I think that is another reason why once I got into sales with the right mentor, with the right dedication, but with that background in marketing, I was able to piece together everything I'd already learned. And I think actually now you've mentioned that, I do recommend all of my private students, I recommend that they study marketing. I think that is going to help them massively in their sales, you know, to understand why do people get influenced by things they see, things they hear. So I think that's huge. I think that's huge. And then the fourth kind of section for your principles is actually on the phone. Now, interesting that we've covered 3 different sections and we haven't even talked about being on the phone yet. So you asked me principles of sales. 75% of my principles are before you even get on the phone.
Oh, interesting.
Once you're on the phone, there is one principle that is make or break. And you can hear it on a call review. You can hear it on calls that you listen to. Is there a moment of challenge? And a lot of the sales trainers now talk about, oh, you don't want to create sales resistance. Well, there's a reason someone doesn't have what they want, because they haven't faced the resistance. They get to a point where there's some difficult moment they have to go through to get what they want, and they back away. Now, your role as a sales advisor or a sales professional is to find the moment where they've, excuse my language, usually pussied out, to bring their attention to it and then walk them through that wall. And what most salespeople do that suck is they try and dance around the wall. They try and avoid it. They try and go over it or under it or around it, or just pretend that there's no wall there. And it's like, the first thing I'm looking for on a call is, why is this person not where they want to be? And it's because they haven't challenged themselves enough to overcome an internal limiting belief, an external thing that they're blaming. Oh, you know, the marketplace this, or money that, or my wife doesn't want me to do it, or whatever. That's the first thing I'm looking for on a call. Now, the skill, and I'll give you an example, you know, if you're looking for what is the resistance or what is the challenge, if you saw someone on the street that was overweight and you just went straight up to them and said, dude, you're super fat. Like, you need to lose weight. It's really bad for your health. You're going to die. All of your kids are going to miss you when you die. You can't have that conversation like that. But you do need to have the ability to go up to someone that's overweight and say, hey, I saw you walking. Are you doing that just for fun, or are you doing that for health and fitness? Oh, I'm doing that for health and fitness. Awesome. You know, do you do anything else for health and fitness? Yes, I do. I do this, I do that. Wow, that's great. You sound like a really dedicated person. I'm curious, you know, given that you're so dedicated, do you actually have a personal trainer and like a plan that you're following? I'm getting into the conversation of like, I'm getting to the point of being able to say, listen, like, you're clearly so dedicated. I'm curious, why have you struggled to lose this weight for so long? But I'm finding my way into the point where I can have the difficult conversation and being able to dance around that. You know, one of the quotes I explain to my students is, Muhammad Ali used to say, I only start counting my sit-ups when they start hurting. Like, the only moment you're on a sales call is when you're challenging someone. If you're just talking about what they've done in the past, what they're trying, you know, how it's going for them, and you're just on this really surface level conversation, you're not even having a sales call. You're just having a chit chat. And so on the call, if you listen to call reviews from, you know, people that I train or businesses, the one thing you're looking for is, where is the moment where the sales rep hits the wall, and then how do they deal with that? If they don't ever hit a wall in a sales conversation, someone's not going to buy anything. Another good quote from it I heard from Eli Wild, although I think he pinched it from someone else, was an undisturbed buyer never buys, which is so true. If you don't disturb someone, if you don't bother them a little bit, if you don't frustrate them a little bit, they're not going to buy anything. And the biggest thing that salespeople do wrong is they don't want to disturb someone. They don't want to bother them. Well, there's a reason that they're not where they want to be. They haven't been bothered. They haven't been rubbed up the wrong way enough. So number one, you need to rub them up the wrong way. And number two, you need to have an art of doing that so that you can do it in a way that they trust you. They want your advice. They want your counsel. They want your help. And that's really the skill.
Yeah, I love that. And I saw someone who said, don't try to prove yourself on calls. I think it was Chris Do.
No, definitely.
So if someone says, you know, that's a little bit more expensive than I was expecting, or we get to the challenge, right? Like, oh, sounds a little bit expensive. I saw someone else selling it way cheaper. Instead of trying to prove, but we include this, but we, you know, instead it's like, yeah, but that's kind of what it costs to work with people like us. Or if they ask like, why is it so expensive? It just is. It's a company policy. It's a pricing a package that we have. And instead of like trying to change like, how would you overcome an objection like that? Are we on the same page there where you're kind of just confidently like, yep,
100%, brother.
That's
like,
what we do.
If someone said to me like it's really expensive, I'd be like, yep.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to say anything
why
else.
do you think it's expensive?
We're really good.
I don't know if that's a good objection.
Well, or like if someone says to me like, well, you know, it seems very expensive, like why? I'd be like, because we're really good. Like I'm not trying to argue it. I'm not trying to fight it. I'm just putting up the wall and saying, well, we're damn good. And then if like, well, I've seen it cheaper somewhere else, and be like, yeah, you can always go for cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Some people want to go down, and they want to go down and down and down until they can find like the person that's going to do a funnel that has one picture on it and 2 words. Other people want to go to the top. So my question for you, Gusten, is, are you looking to rise, or are you looking to fall to the lowest level that you can possibly bear?
I also like to use stories and examples where someone literally backed out for price reasons and then came back later, and now it's the same price, if not more expensive, and they've wasted 6 months. And so I'm sure you've had a lot of experience where you have stories, and maybe you're building like a story bank or story vault, but like you seem to have a lot of examples or metaphors that you can pull out the hat and then talk to people in a way that it makes sense to them. Because that's the number one secret for any marketer or copywriter too. It's like you can't tell them, hey, you're fat, you need to lose weight. They already know that. So you're not making them feel any better or feel like you're building trust to where you can help them. So what's your strategy there? I notice you have a lot of those like stories and metaphors that you're using.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the strategy that I use is to listen to the background of the person. So one comes to mind, top of mind. Someone was saying, you know, hey, I'm just shopping around. This was at the end of the call. They were basically just saying, hey, I'm just shopping around. You know, I'm not really looking to do anything. And they were a butcher. And I said, yeah, that's funny, because like, you know, typically when I go to the butchers, I just ask to sniff the meat and touch it and pick it up, and then I walk out and I don't buy anything. And he laughed because he knows that it's just such a ridiculous thing to say. And so the stories or the metaphors that I try to use are things that are relevant to the person. Like if someone was a pilot, or they like being a pilot, or they're a father and they've got kids, I'm going to use whatever story, whatever metaphor I can create on the spot that's most relevant. You know, like as a marketer, you've obviously heard of like Eugene Schwartz. You know, the old quote is, what is the conversation that's going on in the top of their mind? You know, meet them where they're at. And so the most important thing with a story or a metaphor or an analogy is relevance. You know, if someone's not got any kids and you've got a bank of metaphors and you pull out the one in your, you know, Rolodex that's about a family man and they've got no kids, doesn't matter how great a storyteller you are, they're not going to relate to it. You know, or if you're talking to someone that doesn't like health and fitness and you pull out a sporting analogy, or, you know, it's kind of like professional athletes, they do this. And you're like, well,
they have no idea.
I don't even play any sports. Yeah. So the most important thing is you got to listen to the person. And that's another reason why I don't use a script. You know, if someone's telling me, hey, I'm a family man, I work in a butcher's, but I want to do X, and then at the end of the call, they say, well, you know, I'm just shopping around. I'm going to be like, well, you know, how do you feel when you're at work and someone comes into the butcher's, they ask to, you know, feel how heavy the hamburgers are, they sniff it, they look at it, and then they go, okay, well, thanks very much, I'm going to go now. You'd think that person's a bit of a weirdo, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So now I've politely told them that the way they're thinking is a bit weird, but I've used it in a story of someone that would do that in their work. How would you feel if someone did that? So now they feel like, well, yeah, I don't want to be a weird person that just jumps on a 1 hour call, sniffs the meat, and then walks out and doesn't buy anything, you know?
Yeah,
so, and like you're laughing, you know, the guy on the phone was laughing. I think that's also a very, very powerful tactic in marketing, copywriting, and sales is humor. Yeah. You know, if you can make someone laugh whilst telling them a lesson and telling them a very important story, you're able to break through. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I love that, Josh. What are some of the most common, and I think I have an idea because I've been getting some of those objections, but what are some of the most common objections that you're getting, and how do you overcome those? Like we have, you know, you need to talk to my wife, which I personally have never understood because she's not building the business, I am. And so we have, it's too expensive. We already covered that one. I need to think about it. What are some other common ones that maybe people listening, they're like, oh, I've heard that one. Yeah, I didn't know what to say there. I would have loved to have maybe an analogy or just a way to, like, are you reframing? Are you confirming, then shifting belief? Or what's your strategy there?
Yeah, so there's kind of like the objections are wife, partner, wife or husband. You've got money. You've got to think about it. You've got a generic smoke screen that's like any, you know, oh, you know, my bookshelf fell over, so I have to do it tomorrow or whatever, like just the most random thing that people say. Now, this has been an interesting journey for me because when I first learned sales, I didn't know that there was such a thing as an objection. My mentor never told me that there's such a thing as an objection, and I never got any objections. And then the moment that I went into a different sales training, because I was always trying to learn more, and I saw this huge section in the portal that was like objection handling. And I was like, what's objection handling? I'd sold 2.5 million by this point and never knew that there was a thing called objection handling. The moment that I started to learn that there was objections, I started getting objections. And so my belief now is that the biggest reason you get objections is because you're lazy in the discovery and you're waiting to the end of the call to handle things that you should have never moved forward in the sales call before handling them. You know, like in the sales call, you should be calling the person out on why they only make 50 grand a year. They say they want to provide more for their family. It's been 5 years that they haven't started any online ventures. And I would say in the call, listen, you say that you make 50 grand a year. It's not enough for you to accomplish the goals for you and your family, but you haven't done anything about this for 5 years. Why? That's me objection handling at 5 minutes into the call. And because I would do that, I then don't get the objection at the end of the call. Whereas again, going back to the whole script versus no script, the reason a lot of people get all these objections is because they're not challenging someone in the early stages of the call, because it's not, you know, in their script, it doesn't say challenge. It just says situation and then talking about whatever the issues are and then talking about their goals and their vision, which is fine. It's needed, but it's all very surface level. Or like in a call, let's say you get think about it. The reason you get think about it is because you haven't challenged someone. They've been wanting to be a funnel designer for 8 years since Clickfunnels came out. And you say, okay, how many funnels have you built? 0. Oh, but you've wanted to be a funnel designer for 8 years and you've built 0 funnels. Can you help me understand what's prevented you from doing that?
You're getting them to realize it. You're not attacking them. You're just helping them realize like what the problem is. It's you.
Exactly. The problem, the reason why someone isn't where they want to be is always them. You've got Google, You've got books. You can figure out the answer if you really want to. Why haven't you figured it out? Well, because you're lazy, because you let your fear run your decisions, because you abdicate responsibility to someone else. It's your parents' fault because they didn't love you, or it's your wife's fault because she doesn't want you to be a business owner. You need to address those things in the discovery part of the sales call. So now, although I can do objection handling, I typically just focus on the diagnosis. And the diagnosis is, if we're talking about business or funnels, how's their business doing? Why is it not doing as well as they want it to? And the reason it's not doing as well as they want it to is because the person, the business owner, is not living up to the level that they need to have the business be successful. You've probably heard the quote, you don't have business problems, you have personal problems that are manifesting in your business.
Yeah, your inner world builds your outer world. Yeah.
Correct. If you get to think about it later on in the call, yes, you can handle it. Yes, you can objection handle it, but you really should have addressed that 20 minutes ago.
Okay. Yeah. And do you get a lot of fake objections where it's like they say, I just don't have time to do this right now. But in reality, it could be, they have life savings where if they even thought about using that, someone else, their partner, it now comes into the picture. They feel like, now I gotta go talk to her because we're spending her money as well. So how do you get to the truth where people just kind of like throw something out there to just get off the call?
Same. No. The same thing. And I'm glad you worded it as, how do you get to the truth? The reason people lie to you on a sales call is because you haven't framed the whole conversation around the truth. If you've had for 25 minutes, if you've had a conversation for 25 minutes where the person tells you things and you don't hold the mirror up to them, like when I was training Hermos's old team at Gym Launch, we would have cool reviews and I'd listen to the sales reps and they'd be talking to a business owner, and the business owner would say something like, oh yeah, my business is doing reasonably well. Some months it's up, some months it's down, but it's doing reasonably well. And the sales rep would say, oh, okay, cool. And then they'd move on to the next question. And I'd say, the moment that you missed calling that person out on their BS is the moment that they're going to start lying to you for the rest of the call, all the way through to objections. Because even if it's unconscious, the other person on the end of the phone knows now that they can get away with it. They can get away with just lying to you. So the first moment that you have a tingling of your spidey sense that someone is BSing you, you have to say, hey man, you say your business is doing okay, but you're also saying it's inconsistent. Is inconsistency okay? And the moment I say that, the person's like, oh, this guy's not fucking around. Like, I can't screw around here. That's the moment where they're not going to give you something like, well, I don't have time. Well, how do you mean you don't have time? You said that you make, 10 grand 1 month, 2 grand the next month. It's up and down. You want to make 100 grand a month and you don't have time. Well, you're wasting a bunch of time with all of this inconsistency.
And you don't have money, so you should have time. Like, what are you doing with your time?
Yeah. What are you doing with your time?
Yeah.
Right now, your time is being bled out of you every single day with the inconsistencies in the business.
And then you craft an offer that shows them how, by working with us, we'll actually work with you one-on-one, where you get your time back so that we can actually implement this, right? That's where you're doing the discovery and finding the truth.
100%. It's all about having a truthful conversation from the moment you start. And going back to what we were saying about the pre-call text messages, if you're sending a text message to someone saying, hey, I'm super excited to get on a phone call with you, can't wait to have a conversation with you, thank you so much for booking, you're already being disingenuous. Like, did you literally jump out of bed, dancing your way through to the kitchen because you're so excited for the conversation you're about to have with someone today? If the answer is no, you just lied to them in your text message. Unless you're some like weird person that's genuinely like doing backflips down the hallway because you've got a sales call booked in. But I don't. I wake up, I look at my calendar and I go, all right, I got 6 calls today. Yeah, whatever. Why am I then sending a disingenuous text message?
Yeah.
And so you've already framed the call around not having a truthful conversation. My old framing, I sometimes use it for a bit of a laugh. The old framing that I used to use on every sales call was, hey, Gusten, got you booked in today. This conversation is pretty straightforward. We're going to just have a no bullshit conversation. I want to know what's going on. I want to know what your goals are. And we're just going to have an honest conversation, no BS. And if I can help you, great. If not, I'll let you know. Fair enough. So I literally start the conversation with, you're not going to bullshit me and I'm not going to bullshit you. Yeah. And that kind of like being abrasive from the first moment, the person's like, oh shit, like we're not going to have a surface level small talk conversation. A lot of the sales industry now is about like, no, you don't want to say that because then you're going to create sales resistance. It's like, I want there to be resistance in the call. I want there to be resistance and friction and tension, because that is the moment that the person's going to decide to be the bigger person and rise above that resistance or cower away. But if there's no resistance, they're just going to go around in circles as a human being and stay in a holding pattern for the rest of their life.
I love what you said there, decision, because you want decisiveness. It's almost better to get a no than to get I'll think about it, because then you've done something wrong in the pre-call and the beginning of the call. For funnel builders and funnel agencies, trying to find out what the problem is, because sometimes if a beginner starts selling funnels, if they ask too many questions, the client who's already making 8 figures might start feel a little bit like, okay, I get, you're asking all these questions because, you're getting a little bit close to me. Is it better to ask data instead? So for example, if I were to build a funnel for you, I would say, let's say you're selling a 2K course. I would say like, what's your current, if you have an automated course funnel, like sales page, order form, and confirmation page, like what's your current conversion rate on that sales page to order form, and then order form to a confirmation? And so personally, I like to get that data because it also positions me as the expert who is a nerd and obsessed about like the whole picture, not just design. I don't ask business owners a lot of time, like how much you're making per month and where do you want to be? Typically in coaching offers, I do that more, but not for funnel agency offers. So maybe talk to me about statistics, how you use data, and trying to find the real, because that's truth. If you get the data, then there's no emotions really involved in it, and you can say like, well, you want to be there. And like, we've done this for so many people and we can do the same for you.
100% spot on. If you get the data, then people can't screw around. So if I was selling funnel designing packages, I would say, hey, got you booked in today. I'm curious, what has you looking at funnel design? Are you looking for your first funnel, or have you got a funnel but you're looking to make some optimization? So first of all, I want to know, have they got a funnel or do they not have a funnel? Let's say they don't have, or let's say they do have a funnel but they want a new one. Got it. That makes sense. So just so I can get a very quick 30,000 foot view, what does your current funnel look like? Oh, it's 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages. Got it. Makes sense. And who built that? Oh, I built it as the business owner, or I had someone else do it. Okay. So you've got a funnel. It's got 4 pages. You had someone build it. Why do you want a new one? Oh, well, and then the moment I say, why do you want a new one? Well, I like it, but, and I'm looking for that challenge around the word but. Okay, how do you mean it's slow? Well, we have people come through it when we do a 3-day challenge, the funnel breaks. You mean it completely shuts down, or what do you mean? Well, yeah, like sometimes it actually breaks and we can't generate the checkout page. And how many people do you typically have on a 3-day challenge? Oh, 50,000. Do you know roughly when it breaks? Oh, at 20. Okay, so you're losing 30,000 people. How much is the purchase that they're trying to make? $100. What about with the upsells? Oh no, with the upsells, it's like 5K. Okay, 30,000 times 5K. Okay, so you're losing like 3 million. And how often do you run these 3-day challenges? Oh, every 2 months. So you're losing 15 million a year. And how long has this been going on for? So like you said, I'm numbers all the way down. Now, the moment, however, is, okay, you've been losing 15 million for the last 18 months. Why are you only looking at a new funnel now? Well, because of X. Now, that moment of X is the BS that they're living by as to why they haven't got this fixed for the last 18 months. That's when the real challenging conversation starts coming out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I like what you did there, where you're genuinely concerned for them. And why, wait, 20,000 people are leaving. And sometimes it's not the order page breaking. Sometimes it's just, it's people are bouncing. So the sales message is off. The offer isn't converting. Maybe the design doesn't build trust. And so it's like, we're trying to figure out, okay, how many people are you sending and how much are you paying for those? Is it organic? Is it paid ads? How much is your ad budget? And wait, so only 1% is converting? That means you're spending you're spending 15,000. And what are you doing with those? So like, I guess we could then go, you have a follow-up process in place to get those into book calls, because I assume you have a higher ticket offer, and you just get all that data. And maybe even, and you let me know, Josh, maybe I even at that point start taking notes, right? Just like, okay, I need to like have the full picture.
Every call, you've got to have like notes after notes after notes after notes for everything. You've got to have notes.
Is it just for you, or is it also to paint a picture of like, oh, he's serious, he's dedicated because he genuinely wants the information?
It's 100%.
You can't bullshit like, oh, I care about this, so I can say, well, our package is like 10% of that.
It's for me because I don't do my calls on Zoom. I just do an audio call. And so the reason I take so many notes is, and this is the other difference between a script versus no script. With a script, the assumption is that figuring out the problem is linear. That's not true. Like, I'll sometimes start with what are they currently doing? Like, what's their current funnel? I'll get into the problem. I'm still not clear why we need to have a conversation, why they need a new funnel. And I might get 20 minutes into the conversation and then I go, now I see how that connects to that, which connects to that, which connects to that, which now creates this. When you're following a script, you're assuming that you're figuring things out as you go. That's just not life. That's not how people communicate. People communicate and they spiel a bunch of stuff out and you're like, all right, I better write all this down because I'm not really sure where we're going with this. And then your job as a sales professional is to ask the right questions to bridge everything together. And then when I get to that moment where I'm like, I can see your problem, Gusten. I understand why you need a new funnel. Is there anything that I've missed? And they'll say yes, and they'll add some more stuff in. And I'll say, okay, let me add that into the plan. And so I'm literally building a full vision of their current business, their future business, where the roadblocks are, where the limiting beliefs are in them, where the blind spots are. And then I'll read it back to them. I'll say, okay, so you've got this is working, this isn't working. You want it to be like this. The reason that it's not going from that to that is this. Have I got all of that correct? And then when they say, and usually the answer I hear from people is, damn, you're a great listener. I could have never explained it as well as you did. That's the moment that you've built authority, because they couldn't even explain it as well as you have. So that's why I make notes, so that at the end of the discovery, I can read it back to them and they're like, wow, this guy's got my business better than I got it. He understands what I want. He understands why I'm not there. I trust that this person has been able to architect my whole business. So obviously he can help me get to where I want to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that. And for us visual like funnel builders, I like to use example closing at that point where I have the data. And then I'm like, hey, is it cool if I share my screen just to, I prepared a few examples to show you. And clients really love, and prospect, they really love when I bring like 3 to 5 examples. And some of them can be from my own portfolio, like, hey, we did the same challenge funnel. And even if I can have authority by association, so I can say, I did this one with Tony and Dean, that brings a lot of credibility. But also like, I found this and I did my research. And I think with your vision, your niche, your offer, I think that this branding and this position, this level, this is the standard that I think we should have with your company. They're like, oh, finally someone who sees my vision, because maybe my partner isn't, maybe my friends here in Finland, they don't get me, but this person, man, this professional who totally understand me. So Josh, maybe we leave the rest for the masterclass, which people will get access to as you come in and do some more training. I'll send you a document with more examples from the sales funnel industry that I've worked with, and you can sort of tailor it to people there. And I don't want to take too much of your time, but
that's fine.
Question.
The other...
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, go.
I'll let you finish.
Yeah, the other thing that you asked me before we jumped on here was like top tips, which I think is a really cool thing for people. And I have 3 tips that are a little bit different to what usually gets touted in sales training. So my top 3 tips for anyone is, number 1, to be the person that you want to have on the phone. And this was one of the very, very early lessons that my mentor taught me, is he said, Josh, how do you buy something? And I was like, what do you mean, how do I buy something? And he was like, do you go into a shop or go and look at something online and then spend a week thinking about it and comparing all the options? Or do you find something and you click buy and you just buy it? And I really had to think about that. And I was like, yeah, I probably look at things and then I rethink about it. And then I come back to the website or whatever. And my mentor told me, the way that you show up in life is the way that the other people in your life are going to show up. So my number 1 tip for sales professionals or business owners is become the person that you want to do business with. Don't ask your wife for counsel on your decisions if you don't want people to ask their wife to make their decisions for them. Don't spend, a day, a week, a month looking for the cheaper option if you don't want your clients to go shopping around for the cheaper option. So like now, when I buy something, I always just buy the highest ticket package because that's how I want people to show up in my life. I want them to just buy the premium one. So that's my first lesson. Second lesson or tip is to remove everything from your mind. And this was another lesson that I learned very early on. So if you're on a sales call or a discovery call and you really want to understand something, but in your mind, you're thinking about the laundry that needs doing, you're thinking about something you need to write down, you're thinking about your phone pinging over there, you can't be there with the person. You can't be present with them. So whatever you do in life, and this isn't just a sales call, this is the conversations that you have with your family, the conversations you have with your friends, your partner. At all times in your life, you need to have an empty mind. Like Bruce Lee says, you can't fill up a cup that's already full. And so I always try and have a journal. Now, my journal, I have different versions of journals, but the journal I'm talking about isn't a journal to write out my day and to write out, my little diary or whatever. It's a journal to take the things that are inside my mind and get them out of my head so that now my mind is a blank slate. It's completely clear to have a conversation to figure out someone's business or to figure out whatever it is I'm talking about. So remove everything from your mind is a very, very important lesson. And then the third thing that we talked about already a lot is to learn to sell without a script. If you're always selling with a script and you want to go to the next level, throw your script in the bin and learn to sell without a script. Aside from just allowing you to have real conversations with people, the other thing that it does for sales professionals is it allows you to get away from being bored. If you're selling 3,000 sales calls a year and you do that for a year and a half and you're always following a script, I guarantee you'll get bored. Yeah. You won't enjoy what you're doing for very long. So
yeah,
those are my top tips.
It's the difference between building genuine relationships and just checking people off a checklist and a CRM. And so which one would you want to live if you have a career in this?
100%.
I want to add the thing you said about the mirror effect, the way that you do things, the way that you buy things. It's sort of like everything that you do in your own life. Like you go to the gym, you expect a lot of high standards for yourself. You work on improving yourself 1% every single day, and you'll attract better people to you because everything is energy, right? And the 100%. Second thing is you said detach from the outcome, or I think you said it some other way, but basically empty your mind every call you go in, and you're just trying to build a relationship and see how you can help them. And you're not desperate, because people can see if you operate from a place of power or from a place of scarcity, like I need this. Right. And so nobody wants to buy from someone who needs this to happen and it needs to happen now. It's different if you create the challenge and you help them overcome that resistance, but you do it from a place of power of like, I know we can help you, right? You're in your mind and you're like trying to, find the easy way out, but I know we can help you. So that's way different. Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years from now? Because as you stack on new skills and you get to new levels, you have a different view, just like a mountain, and you see opportunities, you see what you can do, and your beliefs are shifting. So with your skills and where you're at, where do you think you'll be in 5 to 10 years? What's your vision for what you want to build?
Yeah, my vision's very clear. I'm going to be a stage speaker at the level of someone like Tony Robbins. So I'm going to be able to fill out auditoriums of hundreds of thousands of people and take everything that I've learned from the start in marketing to sales to, you started talking about energy, which is the journey I'm on now, to learning more about quantum physics and manifestation and how that really works in the science world. Yeah. And taking all of that and being able to teach that from a stage. So I've just started working with Eli Wild one-on-one. And really just going now from one-to-one conversations to one-to-many. And I'm super excited about that journey. And it's going to be a decade-long journey to see myself touring around America, touring around the world, doing stages. But that's the next level for me.
Sounds very similar to me. I feel like we've, even though we do different roles in the marketplace, I feel like we're on similar journeys. We focus on health, business, lifestyle in general, stacking skills, and I'm also starting public speaking now with the first one in US at the high level event next month. So excited for that as well. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you for joining, for coming on and sharing your wisdom with our people.
It's a pleasure. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.